Hello, Bible readers. How does forgiveness work? That's what Psalm 32 speaks to, and spoiler alert, it's good news. Sometimes Lutherans like us ELCA types are pointed at by other Christians as erring on the side of grace, as though it is an error to believe in the radical grace of God, as though it is an error to believe that forgiveness is God's gift to give rather than something for humans to earn. And the thing that especially pushes my buttons about this is that those who say we err on the side of grace, they take it for granted that our error must not come from Scripture. In fact, they'd say we don't draw our understanding of forgiveness from the Bible, but they do. To the idea that we ELCA types just preach and believe in whatever we want to believe in, that grace is God's gift, that forgiveness is given, not earned, I would submit Psalm 32. A lot of Christians over the centuries, and many more fundamentalist Christian types now, err on the side of God being a punishing, angry God, seeking to change our behavior by making humans afraid. It's just not what Psalm 32 says. It's not what Psalm 32 is about, and it's not alone in Scripture. Psalm 32 represents the standard, the norm. It's not an outlier. Paul quotes Psalm 32 in Romans 4 to make the point that no one earns a place in God's forgiveness, not by being circumcised or through any other behavior or action. Forgiveness is given, is Paul's point. So Paul errs on the side of a gracious God. Psalm 32 is rooted in the picture of God we first see in Genesis, a creating rather than a punishing God. 2 Samuel tells a story where Psalm 32 comes to life. David confesses his sin to Nathan after the whole Uriah Bathsheba episode. If you're not familiar with what David did, I invite you to read a couple chapters from 2 Samuel, chapter 11 and 12. Anyway, David says, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan says, "Now the Lord has put away your sin." That's it. Nothing in between. After his confession, David did not then offer 50 push-ups or whip himself on the back or publicly humiliate himself in order to earn some kind of forgiveness. Once David spoke the words, Nathan responds with God's forgiveness. That's it. Done. That's biblical. So is Psalm 32 that shows from verses 3 through 5, as my Brueggemann and Bellinger commentary calls it, the primal drama of forgiveness is narrated in these verses 3 through 5. It's a very simple move from sin concealed to sin confessed and forgiven. I think the problem many people have with this biblical understanding of forgiveness, that to many of us seems too good to be true, is that it seems too easy. Too simple. And simple it is, I'll admit that, but easy it is not, and we all know that. I say it is simple because it's true that all we have to do is say, like David said, "I have sinned against the Lord," and God immediately simply puts it away, puts away our sin. We are forgiven so that we can move on. But as simple as that process truly is, and it is, it's not easy to do. We know this deeply. We conceal our sin because of very powerful forces like pride. I don't want to admit my sin. We conceal sin because we don't want to face the worldly consequences of our choices. We don't want to disappoint people or have convinced ourselves maybe that admitting to a sin will create bigger problems than remaining distant from the truth, right? That's at the heart of what confessing does. When we hide in our sin, We're living as though our bad choices are more powerful than God, are somehow, as though we're somehow safer away from God in our sin than if we push the sin away, admit it, and come back to God. Like verse 3 says, while I kept silence, my body wasted away, my strength was dried up. And there is this break then between verses 4 and 5, and it's in that break when the psalmist, for whatever reason, however the psalmist finds the courage or the faith, they finally come to verse 5. Then I acknowledged my sin to you. And what do we think happens? God smites, throws lightning down. I acknowledged my sin to you, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. It is that simple. Not that it was easy. It's that simple. The psalmist's confession is not accompanied by 7 years of hard labor or any kind of physical or spiritual punishment. It was simply met with forgiveness, because that's how biblical forgiveness works. Divine forgiveness looks a lot like a miracle where God recreates life. It's a moment of rebirth, and it's not necessarily easy for a human to confess. Likely, it's also not easy for God to forgive. But God does hard things, especially when we do a hard thing, like admitting to our sin. Forgiveness then is the result of us and God remaining staying committed to the truth. And that commitment to the truth is faith. It's remaining committed to our relationship that is grounded in mercy and steadfast love. Psalm 32, the forgiveness psalm. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.